Hey guys, Thrasher here, and it's time we dig a little bit deeper into the state of Dragon Ball Legends and how the Zenkai system has affected it. Let's talk about it right now. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to talk about the Zenkai system in general. I don't want to talk about the way that it's been altered over the last couple months. That's obviously a huge issue, and we'll talk about that in the second part of this video. It'll all be in one video. But the first thing I want to talk about is Zenkai itself. So I do think it's actually a good idea. It updates characters. It allows you to invest more time into them to make them more powerful as you get Zenkai souls and things of that nature. I do think that's actually a good idea. So that part of it, I think, actually helped the game. The part that I think was a major issue is the fact that they realized that, hey, we don't have to give people missions so that they can Zenkai characters to give them Zenkai levels. Instead, what we can do is just force them to pay in Chrono Crystals, and they get these banners that make characters easier to Zenkai, but you're pretty much forced to do it. You can't do it through missions. Now, there's a couple issues with that. The major issue with that is if you start adding Legends Limited characters, which is what they've recently done, or I mean, kind of recently. Obviously, the father-son Kamehameha Gohan was the first real one that was a big issue. Everyone would say, you know, when Beerus got his Zenkai, I don't even know how long ago it was now, a long time ago, that he was extremely powerful. It wasn't game-breaking like the Gohan was. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to continue to get these basically game-breaking Zenkai characters. So you've got the Gohan, you've got the Cheat Coup that just came out, and then some would say Android 18. I don't think she's game-breaking. I think she's almost as good as the Gohan and the Cheat Coup. Probably not quite as good. Some people will say that there's kind of a rock, paper, scissors thing going on with that. I will cover that more here in a little bit. But the general idea is that you have to get these characters to 7 stars that are very expensive just to get 1 or 2 of them. And I think you need 5. I think you need 5 of them to get them to 7 stars right now. It's just, outside of people who spend a ton of money, it's not very viable. So I think what's going to happen is the whales are just going to continue to crush people. Whereas in the past, obviously whales have had an advantage. If you pay a lot of money and you have better characters, you have a little bit of an advantage. Now, if you pay a lot of money, you have a massive advantage. And some people over time have said, oh, well, they're removing this to give the whales more of an advantage. Good examples of that are changes to how dash step worked, or how different step techniques have worked and how they remove those. Things of that nature, things that remove skill caps in certain areas and then give you more of a bonus for having a better character just in general. Yes, that stuff has happened. I think this is much, much worse, and the reason for that is because you have old characters that are fairly hard to get. At the time you got a few of them, you were very powerful, they've fallen off in power, and now they want to bring them back, and it's twofold. So the first part of the Zenkai is the Zenkai ability, which basically makes the character considerably more powerful because they have... Let's actually go into one real quick. So we're going to go... So I think this Gohan's probably the best example. Let's go ahead and open this up. So this was a character who obviously for a long period of time reigned supreme. He was the best character in the game for... I don't even know how long. Back when I was running my tier list, I want to say it was like 5-6 months in a row. It was a very long time. So let's go over to show details and then ability, and let's talk about the Zenkai ability. So just the simple fact that you're increasing all of his stats and anyone else who is a Red Sun family character by 30 to 35%, absolutely insane. Now, the thing is, if you have 2 characters who overlap in some way, you basically are going to get somewhere between a 40 to 60% stat boost across all of their stats. That's insanity. That's a massive boost just by itself. I would say if that was the only thing they got, they would become at least playable in most cases. Most characters would be playable with a 60% stat boost, especially when they're boosting other characters. Now, the thing about Zenkai abilities is they're a little bit restrictive. I think we need to reduce those restrictions, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. But that's not the entirety of the update with Zenkai. Obviously, they get abilities that show up down here. These 2 are locked. I'll probably unlock this one. I think it's this one right here. I'll probably unlock this one later today. I finally have enough actual souls to do it. It took me forever to actually grind them. That's another thing that's completely unrelated to this specifically, but just the way that you get souls right now is just, it's annoying to get this far down. People want to sit there and grind for, you know, I don't even know how many hours it would take to actually grind this out. I'd have to figure that out. But this is the other half of it, right? So you've got the Zenkai ability, which is already very, very powerful. It can make your characters very strong. And then you have these buffed abilities. So you have old characters who were good. Their abilities were very strong for the time. Now they're not as strong because of the immense power creep that's been happening. So they buff these abilities. So you've got Zenkai abilities that are a big buff. And then you've got a secondary buff, which by itself, these ability buffs are generally good enough to make the character playable again. So you've taken a character that's gone from, they used to be super OP to now they're playable because of the Zenkai abilities, to now they're super OP again because you have Zenkai abilities, and then you stack them on top of these buff abilities, and it just makes it so if you're a person who can't spend enough money or who hasn't been playing long enough to pull one of these characters to 7 stars, you just can't compete, period. Now, that brings me to my next point, general catch-up banners. So, as I've said in previous videos a long time ago, I always say try to save your crystals as best you can for the anniversary and for Christmas, because generally they have catch-up banners. If they're going to continue to do this Legends Limited character Zenkai, where basically every Legends Limited character that gets a Zenkai just becomes a monster, with the exception of a couple Legends Limited characters that are not amazing, they're going to have catch-up banners. Because if you have people running around with a Zenkai Father-Son Kamehameha Gohan, a Zenkai Chiku, a Zenkai Super Vegito, I mean, people who don't have that are just going to quit playing the game. And that's the big thing, is these characters just become so immensely powerful that it's just not fun for anyone that doesn't have them, and they're very, very hard to get unless you're spending a lot of money. So one of the proposed solutions for that is sort of the balance, right? So obviously the Gohan is amazing, the Chiku is amazing, and some people, and I agree with them, would say that the 18 is amazing. So you have these 3 top tier characters right now that have all been Zenkai'd. 2 are Legends Limited, 1 is not, so most people have access to her. But the problem is, people are saying it's a rock, paper, scissors, right? So you've got the Gohan. The Gohan can obviously defeat the 18, so that's a problem for 18. But now that this Chiku is here, he can defeat the Gohan, and then most people would say the 18 has a reasonably good chance of beating the Chiku. That's not always true, but I would say that's a viable possibility. Here's the problem. It's not really a rock, paper, scissors, because you can run a very viable Sun family team, or like a hybrid Sun family team that has the Chiku and the Gohan on it. So let's say you have the 18 and you're like, oh, I can compete. No, you can't, because anyone that has the Gohan is going to have more than enough ability to defeat you. And if you have, say, even the Chiku, someone who has the Chiku and the Gohan can still defeat basically anything you want to send at him. If you just have the Chiku, you put the Gohan and the Chiku on your team versus the person with just the Chiku, your Chiku kind of defends against theirs, and whenever they have to switch out, you just use your Gohan to punish their other 2 characters, and eventually it gets to a point where the Gohan has killed the 2, and you're down to your single Chiku versus, or their single Chiku versus your Goku and Chiku. There's no real rock, paper, scissors right now, and eventually, hopefully, they'll get there, but I don't think that they're going to get there just by making these one-off super powerful characters. And the other major issue is because these Zenkai characters are so powerful, everyone's spending their crystals on those, and they're not really spending crystals on new characters, and that's a big issue. So you're going to see a lot of burnout just in general because of that. So let's talk about some possible changes that could help fix this issue before everyone burns out and they're not making any more money and the game servers shut down. Now that's a long ways off. Even if people start quitting pretty quickly, that's still a couple years off. Like, they're making money hand over fist right now. But let's talk about a couple things. First off, I want to talk about the fact that they need to change the way that they're doing Zenkai, so that the Zenkai boost that single one-off team carrying characters like Gohan or like the Chiku or Super Vegito whenever he gets his are not so powerful that they just overpower everything, right? So they should get a large Zenkai ability boost, the thing that increases all their stats, but what they shouldn't get are large boosts to their abilities. Their abilities should very minimally get changed, and I think they're starting to realize that. As you saw with Bardock, the Super Saiyan Bardock, he didn't really get massive boosts to his abilities, because if he did, he would just be an absolute monster, and the Super Saiyan meta would come back, and it probably wouldn't be gone for a very long time. And that's also probably because they're aware that at some point here, the purple legendary Super Saiyan Broly needs to get a Zenkai as well. So, in general, we need to move in a direction where it's not about single characters anymore. You will always have that one best character on your team, but it's about going after specific teams and having Zenkai abilities that boost up teams, because that's sort of where we started when this game first came out, what, 2.5 years ago? A long time ago. And as we moved away from that and the game got too single character focused, it got to a point where the people who spent the most money just could win, and we need to get back away from that. So then the other key there is you have old support units who used to be good back when support abilities were the most important thing. You can buff those units, but what you should really be doing when you Zenkai them, or what the developers should do, is increase their Zenkai ability that buffs stats absurdly. Make it just some massive amount so they have to be on your team, and that way they can take those spots up and they actually make sense. Because if you say you have an old unit who you were pretty much just using for their Z ability, you now want to use them for their Zenkai ability. In most cases, there's a unit who has a better Zenkai ability for whatever primary unit you're using on your team. That's sort of where this needs to go, where your team is now filled out with people with amazing Zenkai abilities rather than super buffed characters overall who have new abilities that are just insane as far as their combat abilities. So that's sort of where I think that needs to go. But we'll see what the developers come up with for a solution. Now, a lot of people think that they're going to keep going down the road that they're going right now because all they care about is money. And technically that's true. They do care about money. That's the driving factor here, but there's something to think about. There's a difference between making a ton of money right now and worrying about the CLTV. So in business, the CLTV is your customer lifetime value. So let's say that your average player right now with the system that they're running in the current situation, your average player is worth $100 over 60 days on average, and by 90 days they burn out. $100, cool, that's a fair amount of money. But if you can change the system so they'll play over a longer period of time, over the course of a year they may be worth $500, $600, $700. And obviously more money right now is better than slightly more money than that over a long period of time. But if we're talking factors of many times more money, then they want to keep people around. Plus, if you just burn through everybody, then the game dies. So developers want to keep people around. That's all there is to it. Yes, they care about the money, but they don't want to burn the players out. So I think what they're going to do is make alterations to the system and the way that things work to give the game more longevity, because that does matter to them. But another thing to factor in is it takes time to figure this stuff out. So let's say that the developers have finally figured out, oh, we're losing a ton of players. PvP is basically dead at this point. We've killed it because everyone runs either Cheat-Ku or Gohan. That's basically all you see. You'll see some, I guess, some Android teams every now and then, but I still see a ton of Gohan teams. So what's the solution? Well, they need to sit down and think about it, obviously. There's a ton of possible solutions that have pros and cons. There's drawbacks to anything you could possibly think of. And once they've come up with a solution, which could take weeks or possibly even months, they have to implement the solution, right? And the implementation can take time, because it's not like they're going to say, oh, we just need to reduce the Zenkai ability amount. So rather than everyone getting 20% when they get their rank 1 Zenkai ability, let's make it 14%. That's not the issue. The issue is the system as a whole, because it stacks abilities on top of combat abilities on top of Zenkai abilities. It's just too powerful, and it makes single characters far too strong. They need to find a way to make teams as a whole cohesive again, and not just built around one specific character. So that will take time to implement. So I would expect this to take a little while before you see any real progress. Maybe at some point here in the near future we'll probably see some type of an update in the news that says, hey, we're aware that the current Zenkai system is not what everyone wants. We're going to try to come up with a new solution. I would expect we'll probably see that at some point. And maybe they won't be as forthcoming as that. They'll just say, you know what, we've decided we're going to make some changes to the Zenkai system. Be prepared for that. You should see it in the next few months, something of that nature. But we don't know when that'll happen, but I almost guarantee we will see it at some point. I don't think they'll get rid of the Zenkai system, because as I was saying before, it does add a lot of extra quote-unquote gameplay. There's a lot of stuff you have to do to invest further into specific characters. So it does add extra game time, which keeps people in the game, which keeps them spending. So they're not going to want to get rid of it, but it is forcing the PvP to completely die. So I think they are going to adjust it. Now, with that being said, I could be completely wrong. I'm just coming from my business background and my background as a former game developer, and generally how we looked at the lifespan of players and just a specific game that we were working on and how long we wanted it to last, what we were doing. And my philosophy, or the philosophy that I come from, could be completely different from theirs, but it seems like it's pretty close to the same. So if you disagree, if you have any ideas of your own or just any general input, please put it down below. I love to read your comments. And if you guys like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.